Hello everyone, welcome back to Ansarkari. So today we'll be taking up the newspaper for 19th October. So we have the first article over here, which is talking about forecasting better in India, come rain or shine. Now this is in regard to the monsoons this year, which have been one of the worst if we talk about the recent times. And why we call it the worst is because of the recurrent flood, which are impacting most of the states. And we've also seen an increase of 64% in heavy rainfalls during the monsoon when we compare it with the last decade. Now, when extreme weather comes in, we require better forecasting as well. So, in regard with this, we have Mission Mosam. So, this was recently approved by the Union Cabinet, and this would cover over the next 2 years to enhance India's ability to predict and respond to extreme weathers, events, and the impacts of climate change. Now, this mission Mosam would be focusing upon accuracy, modeling, radar, satellite, and accurate agreement forecast. And this would include citizens to better manage extreme weather events and climate change impacts. So this would help in enhancing your community resilience. Now, this mission would revolve around having next generation radars and satellite systems, which would have advanced sensors. Then we could have Earth system models and a GIS based automated decision support system, which would help in real time data sharing. Talking about the sectoral benefits, so it will improve monitoring and early warning system in agriculture, disaster management, as well as defense, and it would optimize energy and water resource management. And so basically, it would improve communication tools for weather warnings and enhance the user capacity for it as well. With continuous improvement, consistent changes, the mission, it can transform the weather information which is shared and understood in India, which would help in taking the correct or the needed measures regarding this as well. Lady Justice roots in ancient Greece, not always blindfolded. Now, this article was taken out up before also. So, Supreme Court, it has a new statue of Lady Justice. Now, this is basically a blindfolded woman, which is holding a set of scales in one hand and sword in the other. Now, this is to send the message that law is not blind and it sees everyone equally. So, to send that message out, this Lady Justice statue was unveiled in Supreme Court. And when we talk about Lady Justice, so then the history can be traced back to the Greek and Roman mythology, it having connections with both. And if we talk about it in the context of India, so with the common legal system, which is the basis of the Indian judiciary system, the British Raj, they also introduced the iconography of Lady Justice. And in the Calcutta High Court, it was first constructed in 1872 to support the building, and that showed a Lady Justice was blindfolded in some cases with her eyes open. So the new statue that is also very similar to this one. And this maybe we can also talk about in protests in Bangladesh, where a large statue of goddess Themis was erected, and which led to the protest from the Orthodox Muslims who objected to what they claimed was idol worship. So that led to protests over there when Bangladesh installed something similar to this. So this is what it's already talking about. Moving on, we have the next article, how smart insulin promises to revolutionize diabetes treatment. Now, this article is basically regarding diabetes and its treatment and how we have a new research, which is the smart insulin. So, when we talk about diabetes, so we have two kinds of diabetes, type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. So, type 1, it starts in the childhood, and this usually occurs when the pancreas, they do not produce insulin, or they do not produce enough insulin for the body. Then we have the type 2 diabetes. Now, this happens when the cells in the body, they develop a certain resistance to the insulin. So that means it would require greater amount of insulin than what is produced by the pancreas. So these are two conditions of diabetes, and both the conditions, they are managed by the synthetic insulin only. So then that is when it poses a fundamental challenge, as the blood glucose levels in the body, they're not always consistent. Then we have solution or research in this area, which is engineering insulin. So we have a insulin molecule in this, and so it basically with an on and off switch, so which automatically responds to changing blood glucose level. So now this newly developed insulin has been named NNC2215, and it has two main parts. So one is a ring-shaped structure, and then we have a molecule with a similar shape to a glucose. So that is called a glucoside. So how would this new developed insulin would work? So basically, when the blood sugar levels are low, this glucoside binds to the ring, and they would keep the insulin in an inactive stage. That would prevent further lowering of the blood. And if the blood level is high, then it is triggers the insulin to shift to its shape, and then it becomes active. So that would bring a help in bringing the blood sugar levels down. So now if we talk about certain problem or certain challenge regarding this, so the major problem with this is that its activation and the impact are not gradual. So there's still certain research which is required in this area, but this is a new discovery, so it's a positive thing. Then we have this article in regards to the Nobel Prize. Now, India and the science of Nobel. So Nobel Prize started about 100 years ago. And since then, India has had Indian-oriented scientists who have won the Nobel Prize in the science field, but we've not had anyone who was holding the Indian citizenship at that time. So this is what the article is also mostly talking about. So when we talk about Indian origin scientists, so we have Hargobind Khorana in physiology or medicine, Subramaniam Chandrasekhar in physics, and Venkata Ramakrishnan in chemistry. Now, they are Indian origin, but they did not hold Indian citizenship. So it does not come back to India. So this can be seen as a reflection of the state of Indian science itself. And if we compare it with other countries like that of Europe or US, so Europe and US, they are the main countries who won a number of Nobel Prizes. And even China has been increasing its number. So it has 4 times more researchers per million population when compared to India as well. Even South Korea is another scientific powerhouse which fares well on the research indicators. Now, the science Nobels have been overwhelmingly dominated by US and Europe, and many of these scientists or the winners, they come from countries in search of better scientific infrastructure and the ecosystem. So as we are lagging behind, we have countries like China, South Korea, and Israel who are building strong scientific capabilities, and they're having a proper allocation for resources for research, which which basically enhances their ability to win more Nobel Prizes when compared to India. So this is what the article is talking about, how we as a country can strengthen our system as well, or have more research. The next article, what the killing of Yahya Sinwar means for Hamas in the war in Gaza. Now, Sinwar, he was the political chief of Hamas in Gaza in 2017, and he was one of the main men who was recently killed. Now, he was working to restore ties with Egypt, which was very crucial for Hamas because it was struggling in the vast network and would also improve its relations with Iran, which patronized Hamas as part of its axis of resistance against Iran. So when Sinwar died, the killing was it happened at a time when he was one of the most powerful figures in Hamas, and he had a very big influence on the Hamas region as well. Now, when we talk about Israel campaign with regard to this, so one of the main or the foremost objectives of the Israel campaign was also killing Sinwar, and it could potentially pave the way for the ceasefire, which would deal with the return of Israel hostages who are still alive. So we don't know that as of yet. And we have Khalid Marshall, who is now set to replace Sinwar. So does this mean, or does his killing mean that the conflict is likely to be over soon? So many believe that even if Hamas was to agree to a hostage deal, it would likely, continue fighting to ensure its own political survival, and it does not likely mean the end of the war over here as well. Spotted locust invade farmers in Iduki, destroy crops. Now, this article is mainly regarding how because of the climate change patterns in the major regions or in the agricultural regions per se, there are a lot of insects which are coming in since climate change pattern is not very as it used to be. So we have thousands of grasshoppers who arrive from the forest and they cause damage. So we have very many more insects, locusts, grasshoppers coming in and they're destroying the crops because uh, of the climate change problem and just leading to a lot of problems. So even we have the snail attacks and cardamom plantations and grasshopper attacks. So they are direct indications towards the changing patterns, and these would negatively impact the livelihood of many farmers or the livelihood of the farming community. So now this is a problem if you look at it as a and when we talk about crops which were destroyed, so we had banana, coconut, cardamom, vegetables, nuts, wild plants, and teak trees. So the state must come up with such solutions. A perilous highway to salvation in the Himalayas. Now, this article is a talking in regard with the Char Dham Highway project, which was with the aim to boost religious tourism to four shrines. Now, the issue or the problem in this is that the Char Dham unit would require a two-way highway and would disrupt the Himalayan region and the road widening. It could have a double impact on the road blocking road blocking and it could cause landslides as well. So it would heavily impact the ecology of the region. And when we talk about the research, so there's also been an uptick in summer monsoon precipitation due to elevation dependent warming in the years to come, mainly in regards to how this would create a huge problem and with the ecology. So, Char Dham Pariyojana is in fundamental violation of all the environmental norms and the conservation strategies which needs to be followed when it comes to the Himalayas, since that is a very crucial region and very prone to landslide, and it could lead to a lot of destruction in life. So, इसमें internal and external migration, they've led to depopulation and land abandonment in rural areas. So, despite the state government initiatives in incentivizing agriculture. So, talking about the environmental factors, so such as depletion of water resources and other emerging hazards, they've resulted in people leaving the agriculture sectors when it comes to those regions, and they started migrating to the urban areas more. So the state, it has been trying to give them incentives like MSP and in other agriculture sectors as well. But the problem is still there. People are still migrating from those regions. Now, with tourism, Himalaya, the day basically aims to attract business or young entrepreneurs who are looking forward to make opening up hotels in the regions that would bring some revenue to the state over there. But agriculture, that would still be a problem. We talk about Himalayan region, so that faces multifaceted environmental challenges, and that would require a well thought out sustainable pathway, since the region is very crucial. Moving on, we have the next article, Once Upon a Time in Mumbai Again. Now, this is in regarding to Baba Siddiqui's killing. So this is a reminder of the years when organized criminal gangs terrorized the city. Now, this is in regarding of back in the 1990s when the city was in very much control of criminal gangs, which had a huge control over this region. Now, why is that a problem? So they had a huge amount of control on all the sectors, even the actors, since it's also the Bollywood city. So even the actors, they would have been called up for demanding ransom or money. So the city was under a lot of gang influence at that time. So this is what the article is mainly talking about. Then we have the Vora Committee. So this was established in 1993 with the aim to study the activities of crime syndicates, and they had concluded that developed significant muscle and money power and established linkage with the governmental functionaries, political leaders, and others to be able to operate with impunity. So, this talking about the corrupt systems which existed, or the corrupt bureaucrats and police officers too. So, they need to be weeded out. And since gangs terrorizing a city is also a threat to the internal security of the country, so we need to have honest officials, honest bureaucrats who would actually look forward to making the place a safer place for all the country and internal security. Moving on to the next article, we have reaching the bilateral bile. So this is regarding India Pakistan, and our foreign minister Jaishankar recently visited Pakistan, and the speech that he gave over there. So when talking about the opening speech he gave, so he focused on three key areas, which was terrorism, extremism, and separatism. And he talked about in the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Operation, he talked about encouraging trade, energy flows, connectivity, and people-to-people exchange when coming to this area, when coming to the countries. And he said this in the context of Pakistan as well. So this could lead to improving ties. So, to end the rivalry or to end the problems, we believe that engagement is the only way to slowly or irreversibly repair relations between us and the neighboring countries, since it's very important. So, dialogue towards resolution of issues is the diplomatic way forward. Must happen in India as well. The next article calling Canada out. Now, this article is in regard with how a Khalistani member, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, he was a Canadian citizenship and he was murdered, and the blame was brought to the Indian agencies or the Canadian Prime Minister. He straight away called the Indians the ones who killed him and caused disruption in their country. So this article is in regards to calling Canada out with when it comes to supporting terrorism. Canada has not had a proper approach or a proper opinion when it comes to countering terrorism, and they've turned into a safe haven for terrorism in the last few decades. And the criminals or the gangsters, they prefer to go to these countries like Canada in order to be safe and in order to better command um, their gangs which are operating in other countries, India itself being an example. So Pakistan, since a very long time, that has been accused of harboring the Islamic terrorism, whereas Canada, over decade, it has been harboring not just the Islamists, but it has been harboring many others, this brings out Khalistanis as well. And India, it has complained enough about the Canadian terrorism, and it's time that we bring that forward when it comes to this. It's also talking about India, which has complained about Canada's non-serious approach when it comes to countering terrorism in the last some decades. Then we have the next article over here, which is talking about MSP. So, this is talking about the government declaring a MSP per rupees 2,000 per quintal in the 2024-25 wheat crop. Now, wheat is a crop which is mainly centering in Haryana, Punjab, and Uttar Pradesh. And when we come to issues, so that extends to all crops, and the focus on MSP, it takes attention away from improving per acre yields and it reduces cultivation cost. So, which is the only sustainable means to boost the farmer income. So hiking MSPs for certain crops by 210 or 300 per quintal can be a useful sign for farmers to plant more areas under pulses and oilseeds with nothing more. So there's must be a lot of things should be done on the front through investment in breeding higher yields, water and nutrient use efficiency, even with climate change coming in and crops damaging. So we should focus on those areas as well, which would help in improving the yield and heat tolerance of the crops, even the pest and disease resistance. So we should be concentrating on those areas more when it comes to crops with the new challenges coming in with the new times. A stakes game. Now, this article is talking with regards to the satellite communication sector, and it's talking about the satellite sector, which has no national territorial limitations, and that is overseen by the International Telecommunications Center. So we have the Telecommunications Act 2023. So the government, it assigns the spectrum by administrative process for entities listed in the first schedule. So we have the terms and conditions for the assignment of spectrum of certain satellite-based commercial and communication services. And when talking about the main objective coming to this sector, so that should be to ensure a vibrant industry which has healthy competition and not to have more barriers in this sector. In dangerous territory. Now, this article is talking about just we just covered up one about the Canadian accusing India of killing in their countries, accusing the Indian agencies. Now, this article is basically the continuation of that, saying that the West is very hypocritical when it comes to this, since West itself is a source of many political assassinations and even more than that. So not caring about what they're thinking or what Canada or even US for that matter accuses. It is matter of our own security that we need to know what exactly is going on there. Since we have a lot, since catering terrorism, it leads to a lot of problems that could lead problems in the internal security of the country as well. The article is mainly continuing Canada's stand, which was covered in the above article. Starting up, fanning out. Now, this article is covering how India today is now the top innovative lower middle income economy in the world. And this basically means we have millions of young innovations and entrepreneurs in the making. So the country's innovation landscape that has seen a very remarkable transformation and which has led to India emerging as a global powerhouse of both creativity as well as technology. So we have the third largest startup landscape globally. And in this, we have five main key initiatives which have contributed to India's improved standing in the Global Innovation Index. So, first is India's rise in fueled by the robust innovation ecosystem. So, this includes vast knowledge capital, a dynamic startup landscape, and collaborative efforts between public as well as private research entities. Then we have various government-led initiatives. So these includes departments of science and technology, biotechnology, as well as we have the Atal Innovation Mission over here. So they've played a very important role when it comes to the country's research as well as technology. And Atal Innovation Mission is also talking about researches and establishing labs. So this would help improve research in the country. Then we have policy-driven innovations. So this is a Niti Aayog. So this has optimize the efforts in the strategic sectors such as electric vehicles, biotech, nanotechnology, space, and alternative energy. Then we have notable progress in key indicators like the domestic industry diversification. And then we have the highest innovation quality as well. So, what contributed to all this? So, we have the Atal Innovation Mission. It fostered the innovation at the very grassroots level by establishing operational Atal Tinkering Labs in more than 650 districts as well. So, India, in spite of being a lower income economy in the world, it is the top innovative country as well. And so it was ranked 81 in 2015. So now it has reached the 40th position in the world today. So it would attribute to the succession or to the vision and persistence. And it would improve the country's economy as well. Peers look up to our regulation. Now, this article is talking about Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. So there was recently who put up a strong India's financial sector regulators and there was recently a award show where she talked about India's financial conditions. So she talked about how there's always a pressure on the ministries to deliver, perform, and to hear what the stakeholders have to say. And it's also talking about the consumer price index and wholesale price index. So they don't have seem to have much in a commonness. So what is wholesale price index? So this basically measures the changes in the prices of goods sold and traded in bulk by the wholesale businesses to the other businesses. Now, this is published by the Office of Economic Advisor and it comes under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And it is mostly widely used as the inflation indicator in India. Talking about the major criticisms of this index is that the general public, it does not buy products at the wholesale price. It usually prefers having one or two. Then we have the consumer price index. Now this changes from the perspective of a retail buyer and it is released by the NSO, the National Statistical Office. Now this calculates the differences in the price of commodities and services. So it has food, medical care, education, electronics, and it has several subgroups which include foods and beverages, fuel and light, housing, clothing, bedding, and footwear. So when it comes to states, they must work towards having newer sources of revenue rather than being confined to their conventional areas. So we could see it in perspective of Haryana as well, how the conventional area would be agriculture is focusing on entrepreneurship and companies coming up in Gurgaon as well. So, what should the banking sector be focusing upon? So, banking should be focusing upon mobilizing deposits and core banking functions and contributing to the growth of Indian markets, banks, and the insurance sectors. With the best banks awards over here. Now, this article is also a continuation of the above um, article and talking about how the best bank awards were celebrated. The financial institutions in India, eager to achieve new heights when it comes to these banking sectors. Then we have the next article, returning to the Tamil roots of Malayalam. Now, this is in continuation. So, Malayalis, this was written closer to Sanskrit, but was spoken closer to Tamil. And it's talking about the connect that India holds as diversity, even when it comes to literature. So, this novel it seeks to recreate the material and spiritual circumstances of the era of Tamil Sangam poetry. And when we talk about Tamil Sangam, so this was basically the period between 3rd century BC and 3rd century AD. And this was in the south region, which is the area lying to the south of River Krishna and Tungabhadra. So this was known as the Sangam period. This flourished under the royal patronage of the Pandya kings of Madurai. And in this, eminent scholars they assembled and they functioned as the board of censors of choicest literature. When we talk about the Tamil legends, there were three sangams held in the ancient South India. So the first sangam is believed to be held at Madurai, and this is also believed to be attended by gods and legendary sages. But no literary work over here is available. Then we have the second sangam, which was held at Kapadapuram. And then we have the third Sangam, which was also held at Madurai. So we have a few of the literally Tamil literary works which have survived and are useful areas to reconstruct when it comes to the history of the Sangam period. Then we have the next article, the story of women in contemporary India. Now, this article is mainly talking about the position of women or how women are, even when it comes to novels or books or even movies, women are portrayed in a role where they have to be likable, and in likable role then they should have the main character energy as such. So they should be demure and mindful. This is in context of the book Summer of Then, but it's talking about in this book per se the woman was not very idle, she was not very selfless, and she was not what you would call a likable woman, and how that was not very preferred by people. People prefer women having certain stereotyping or being a certain way, thinking a certain way, or doing things a certain way. She was found by a lot of controversies, and this is what the book's mainly talking about: how we accept expect a woman to be a certain way when it comes to the contemporary India as well. And we believe them to be perfect in every sense, where we forget that they're humans too. In Raj Svalbard. Now, this article is mainly talking about the Alps, or the last inhabited stop in the Norway before the North Pole. So now this article is mainly talking about the climate change and the impact that it has had on the area, and what this country, Svalbard, Norway Svalbard region is doing. So over here we can see that there was a lot of ecological awareness when it come to the locals of this area. So they knew what coal mining on their land could impact, and how microplastics in oceans there were very big problems to the region. And they have been noticing that summers still warmer each year. So that is showing how glaciers are melting faster. So this year also the glacier, Svalbard Glacier, it melted 5 times than the daily surface melt that used to happen. And a glacier meltdown, that's a lot of problem when it comes to sea levels, wildlife, and human activity across the planet, and could lead to a lot of problems. This article can be seen with the perspective of climate change and how that is posing problems or threats to the normal ecology, environment, as well as the wildlife, even disrupting the human activity when it comes to that. Even this article is in the same way. It's talking about the ecology or the preserving of the area. Then we have the next article, Vedanta to invest another 1 crore in Odisha. Now, this article is in regards to metal and mining. So they've invested in the Odisha. So this would help in setting up alumina refinery and an aluminum plant in the state. So this would have a massive industrial complex for the downstream industries, and it would include application for the aluminium in the auto, power construction, as well as the railway sector, and how it could also bring job in the state. Then we have the next article, government tariff cuts under the efforts to boost green hydrogen. So green hydrogen, basically the government is aiming to lift the production by 5 million tons by 2030. Now, when we talk about what are the reasons to develop green hydrogen or why is it needed? So, green hydrogen, it would help reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and it would mitigate the climate change. Since the use of fossil fuels for transportation, electricity generation is a major contributor to global emissions as well. Then it would also have energy security and independence. Then, since green hydrogen is a new sector, it would also help creating new industries and jobs, even decarbonizing in sectors which are difficult to carbonize. So this could also help reduce the carbon footprints. And when talking about where can the application of green hydrogen happen, so we have the agriculture sector where it could act as a replacement to the fossil fuels in agriculture, and it has the potential to replace the traditional fertilizers in agriculture with ammonia production with the help of renewable energy sources. And ammonia is a key ingredients in when it comes to the production of fertilizers as well. Even green hydrogen powered farm machinery. It can also significantly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and it could also green hydrogen could also help with water management. So we have investments in production in the country. When it comes to the field of green hydrogen. The revenue loss fears may impede plans to reject GST slabs. Now, this article is in regards to the taxing life and health insurance on different products. So, this we at present we have 18% of GST, which is levied on health and life insurance, and the committee was suggesting tax rate of health medical insurance, including individual, group, family, floaters, and other medical insurance for various categories. So this move is basically aimed towards achieving revenue neutrality by raising the weighted average GST rate, and the revenue neutral rate. Finance minister asked Mexican firms to tie up with startups and academic bodies. Now, this article is mainly in regards to the India and Mexican ties. So, Mexico that has been thriving through nearshoring, and which has resulted in a lot of collaboration between multinational companies and enabled exchange of talent as well as joint efforts for risk mitigation. Now, this article is talking about how India can collaborate with Mexico, and that could be done to strengthen the parliamentary cooperation and also foster the economic development since multinational companies are coming up and setting up in the Mexican region. The article is mainly talking about. Then we have the next one, Karnataka to introduce fee for gig workers' welfare. Now, this fee will fund a welfare board which would design schemes for the gig workers' social security, and this would be collected by platforms which will be passed to the consumers, and it could increase the cost in orders by a few rupees when it comes to per transaction. And the state would also collaborate with partners like IIT Bangalore to develop the necessary transaction monitoring system, and it would also give much needed support when it comes to the gig workers, the deliveries. Gold glitters near rupees 80K, silver jumps up to rupees 94. Now, this article is talking about how gold has surged more than 31% this year, and that was driven by anticipation of more easing by the central banks, which also included the US Fed and the geopolitical tension. So, talking about the rising high prices the gold has seen. So, this happened amid the geopolitical tensions as well with Israel, military action in the West Asia, so which has impacted the trade in a lot of way, and the markets they continue to look to the geopolitical and overnight developments in the West Asia. So that has caused the problem and it has led to uncertainty. Now this article is mainly talking about the carbon credits market underpins, which is very important to the integrity of the credit regeneration. So it's talking about the environmental and human rights based, which are safeguarded when it comes to the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. And they must be examined from the perspective which would ensure high integrity carbon credits. So we have recently the carbon credits were issued in a renewable projects and they've been questioned. So the success of carbon credit market underpins this basic fundamental principles to the of the integrity of the credit debt generated, and complying with environmental and human rights. It could safeguard the well-protected vulnerable communities in the region. So it has Article 6, which talking about the crediting mechanism where countries can voluntarily cooperate to meet the targets. And we have 6.2, which is focusing upon more flexible and bilateral multilateral ties. So project developers, they're mandated to fill a detailed questionnaire which would evaluate the potential risks of their activity across categories such as land and water use, human rights, health, gender equality, which is also significant for India when it comes to developing the domestic carbon credits. Market for cardiac diabetes drugs. So this article is talking about how the drugs of the cardiac and diabetes drugs have tripled in 5 years of the past, and more tripled in the last 10 years. Now, this is a problem since this shows that India has had a lot growing number of non-communicable diseases. So this poses as a significant challenge when it comes to the healthcare system in the country. And it would also hamper the economic growth and even cause mental health conditions. Now, this article is talking about how the insects or how the tiny things that are there in the ecosystem, how they contribute and how they are very important. So, this forgot is statistics how in Europe butterflies have declined by a third, and other parts of the world they've reported similar crashes in bee, flies, ants, and other insects. So, about 40% of the world's insects are threatened by by extinction today, and how we could have used them when it comes to the ecosystem and their importance. So, there's an example also in California how the cottony cushion scale insect was devastating the orange crops, and this insect was brought in by the people, and massive spraying of pesticides would not do, and it caused accumulation of poison. So the insects they have a razor sharp specificity which has direct links to the world outside. And so insects are very important when it comes to ecology of any area. Mira's fruitless fight for forest. Now this article is talking back when India gained independence and Jawaharlal Nehru he took up. So there was Mira who was talking about disenchantment with the political and economic path the India was following, and she had a closer perspective when it comes to peasants and workers in the administrative process. Having a new electoral system which would emphasize local councils rather than a national parliament. So here it talks about her deep appreciation of the role which is played by forest and trees in the economic and the cultural life of rural India. So she was against the large scale colonization and wasteland and cultural waste when she talked about conserving the forest and the trees. So the last article, Kapila Vinu, now this is in regards to Kuttiyattam. So